and welcome to this week's episode of our Doctor Who Chilled Out podcast with Alex and Rhianne. Today's episode is about Rogue, which is the Bridgerton gay fanfic AO3 one. So I've watched it 3 times now. How many times have you watched it, Alex?
Just once.
Just once. And what were your thoughts on your viewing?
Very, very strong.
Very strong.
Really strong. One of the best episodes I've ever seen of Doctor Who, definitely. I've not seen half as many as what you have. Well, not even probably a quarter as many yet as what you have. But of all the new Who stuff since the Eccleston times, this is definitely up there with one of the best episodes.
Has this finally made you get outside that season 1 is the best Doctor Who there could ever be, and there can never be any better Doctor Who?
Well, I think up to this point, this new season 1 isn't as good as the season 1 of Eccleston.
No.
Still, but there's still a double part, a final episode to come, so that could be really strong and boost it up above it. I think it's definitely, there's been enough good episodes in this series now to put it in the argument for challenging Eccleston's series.
What do you think makes Eccleston's season so good?
I just think the darkness of it, and definitely Eccleston's acting as a Doctor is one of my favourite portrayals, because he just doesn't overdo it too much, but then he's not just so far away from boring as well. He just sort of has very real and sort of grey elements to his character that a lot of the other ones don't seem to have.
What I really like about Eccleston's portrayal of him is it's just like he's had all these experiences, and you would be like that as a person. Do you know what I mean? He comes across as really intelligent in loads of different ways. I mean, grounded. And, I feel like the Doctor kind of would be grounded. Do you know what I mean?
Well, you've been reading his book.
I'm a big Eccleston... I already was a big Eccleston defender, but now I'm a crazy Eccleston defender, lad. And his book doesn't really go into Doctor Who that much. It's more about just growing up in Salford.
Mm-hmm.
But it is really good.
Yeah. So is that shaping the way that you're looking back at Eccleston when you think about his episodes now, knowing a bit more about him personally, what you might have been trying to do with some of the elements to his...
Eccleston's someone where, if you've got any kind of degree of empathy about you kind of know what he's about before.
Mm-hmm.
The book doesn't tell you anything you wouldn't already know. Working class background, went to drama school, felt isolated in drama school.
Mm-hmm.
Broke into the industry and kept by his principles to the detriment of his career, essentially.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm sure you knew all about reading that book. Do you know what I mean?
Well, I definitely think you can tell that he's trying to put something personal into it, but I think Shooty's completely the opposite so far. It's very much a performance for him. I think he's really got an idea of how he wants to play the character. I don't think he's trying to bring too much of his real life experience and playing it in that kind of way.
I disagree, because he is definitely playing the Doctor as a gay man.
Mm-hmm.
And I think he's kind of playing the Doctor as himself. I don't know anything about him as a person really, but he's not dissimilar to an Eric on Sex Education. He's just grown up and he's got that wisdom about him. He seems like he is kind of playing himself in a way.
I think he's playing the Doctor the way that it's been designed between him and Russell. I don't think that there's too much improvisation in the way that he's sort of putting the performance across based from scene to scene. I think he's keeping it very consistent. I think if there's a complaint that you've seen people talk about a lot with the Doctor and in some of the fan pages you've looked at, it's the over-emotion and the tears.
The crying
and stuff.
every episode.
But that's been consistent, so you assume that that's the way that he's decided to play that character along with Russell, really.
He cries every episode, but he's also laughing and clapping his hands every episode. Do you know what I mean? So it's he's just a very emotive Doctor.
Yeah, I think they're really playing this Doctor to feel what happened in the Time War very strongly, because there's been a few references to it already in the series, and especially in this episode, all the conversation with Rogue about what he's lost in his own personal life, and that's something that maybe some of the other Doctor's sins haven't gone over as much. I might be completely wrong in this, but from what I've seen of the Tennant series, he doesn't seem to stick to that
No.
period of time in sort of the way he talks about things. When he sort of encounters like an emotional moment or whatever, he doesn't always default go back to the I lost everyone Gallifrey
But that
stuff.
was kind of, maybe this is why you like Shooty and Eccleston, right? Because that's what both of their characters do. Eccleston's whole thing is I lost everyone in the Time War. Shooty's whole thing is I lost everyone in the Time War.
Mm-hmm.
And like not
That's
just
what I'm saying.
in
I'm
the
saying,
Time
I'm saying
War,
this
like all
new
of his
one.
companions.
I'm saying this new series seems to be going back to that and trying to like bring that back up and make that like really front and center of the Doctor's motivations and the way he sort of takes
Yeah.
what happens and processes.
Because as a kid, the Time War was like the coolest part. Like it's such a cool bit of lore, and like I know they went through it in like the Day of the Doctor and stuff, but it's an almost like it's like explaining like the Star Wars prequels. It's like it means more as like a history than it does to actually want to see it. And it just means he makes sense as a character. Because you were really surprised when we first started watching Doctor Who that it wasn't in the original series and it was a new Who thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that was just like a fully new adapted piece of lore from Eccleston onwards, yeah. It feels like it's a very major thing to decide to reintroduce with the comeback of the show.
Yeah.
But it also makes a lot of sense because if you want to relaunch the show and have a big progression and have the darker elements and run it the way that Russell wants to run it as more of a adult show as well as a kids show, then it makes sense to have this big dramatic backstory for the Doctor that wasn't maybe there before.
Do you know what's really funny? You're talking about like it being an adult show and not just a kids show in the darkness. And right now YouTube is just auto put on footage from Space Babies. Fuck that episode, lad.
Yeah. So let's get into Rogue.
Get into Rogue. What did you think of the monsters in the episode?
I think that they're one of my favourite kinds of Doctor Who characters that I've seen so far.
Yeah.
With the kind of campiness and the motivation that's just so like out there and off the wall. The whole cosplay idea I just think was such a clever motivation for the characters because they weren't acting seriously in the episode, so you weren't supposed to take them as like a real threat, even though they sort of kept saying, oh, you know, this will destroy the world because they'll just become other people and they'll cause all kinds of wars and all this. It was very flimsy in that way. I mean, it kind of established at the beginning with Rogue that his plan was to shoot these characters.
Yeah, because that's why he had that big gun.
Yeah, and so that means that they weren't sort of that overpowered in terms of what they could survive, and it was more the Doctor sort of making the case of, well, we're only going to trap them and banish them. I'm not going to let you kill them.
Yeah.
So I think once he knew that, and there were just sort of these characters in the way almost, they just really played up like the comedic side, and I think they looked really, really good. I think the designs ranged in how impressive they looked, but I think that they all looked decent enough. I don't
We
think
all
they all
know
aged
which
too badly.
character you're talking about. We're talking about the one that isn't impressive. He's talking about the bluebird.
Yeah, the bluebird with a massive eyebrow antenna type attachment to the top of the head.
Sorry to this man.
Yeah,
He
definitely
grew up
pulled the
very
short
fast,
straw with the character designs in this one. And also, which character was he even supposed to have taken control of? I didn't really recognise who he was meant to be when he wasn't in his blue
there
form.
there was one like middle-aged fat fella, but it wasn't him because he fainted when he saw the bird.
No, I think that was a different one.
It's a different
I think it was he was like a butler or something, maybe at the like maybe one of the owners of the house or something.
It's a nice problem to have, but so much of the episodes kind of feel like unexplored almost. Like every episode kind of feels like it could have been a two-parter.
Do you think? What makes you think that about this one?
About all of them, like all of the concepts are like really big concepts that could have had more runtime. I
felt that with the Beatles one especially.
Yeah.
But I don't know if I felt that as much with this episode. I think it was like a perfect. Just a one-off, one-stop kind of. You've got this, and it seems like the way they were talking about Rogue and the way that Rogue sort of went out of it, the find me and stuff at the end, implies that he's going to be back at some point. And I think I'm not entirely sure how he's been received, but you'd assume that the reception's been really strong to him because he played it brilliantly.
It's really hard to tell like what people actually think because of the internet. Like I like watching podcasts like this where people just talk about their feelings about it rather than going on articles, because once you go on articles it's like it doesn't really seem reflective.
But then that also gives you such a small sample size, because if you're just going to sort of real Doctor Who fans that have platforms,
Yeah, true.
then you're still in the getting that sort of, yeah, it is difficult.
And then if that's their job, it's in their interest to promote Doctor Who, and then it's like, are they going to really be slagging off Doctor Who? Do you know what I mean?
Well, I suppose your fan pages that you're part of are probably your best place to find out what a large amount of Doctor Who fans think of it, because as I think we talked about this in the first episode, there's not an awful lot of casual audience conversation around
No.
Doctor Who now. So you do seem to have to go to the well for the
Proper geek
yeah,
sphere.
the proper deep dives, the kind of the reviews of the episodes in the context of how does this fit in with all of Doctor Who, rather than just what is this episode like by itself, that you get sort of from papers and magazines and articles.
Obviously,
and stuff like that.
you're getting people being like first gay kiss as like a kind of way to get people to engage with the post.
Mm-hmm.
When the person making the post, they themselves will probably know that Captain Jack Harkness and Eccleston was the first gay kiss with the Doctor.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? So I don't think it's really difficult to tell what people sincerely think about it. Like, I've read some stuff about ratings in the UK being down, but I think a big part of that is people just don't pay for the TV license anymore.
Mm.
Do you know what I mean? So like, who turns on iPlayer? No one I know.
Yeah, that could be a big part of it. But I think on the topic of that with the first kiss thing, as much as that might be sort of ignorance to whoever's putting together the review, this is definitely the first like real gay episode.
Oh yeah, he's gay for real.
Yeah, I mean the Eccleston stuff and a bit of Tennant. There's always those little sort of hints of bisexuality and stuff in the Doctor. But this is obviously a fully gay Doctor, so they're approaching it from a completely different way. There's no kind of is he. That's part of the character, so now
Yeah.
you get to see how he would really interact in those situations, which is a really good thing to get to see now. And for an episode to have that first sort of plot in, this couldn't have been done any better, really. With the
Yeah, it was
rogue
executed
romance, it was so good.
brilliantly. Like I was saying to you, because I'm a big fan of like fan fiction and that. It was like a really well written, like gay fan fiction, where like people get two characters they really want to get together on the big screen with the budget. It was like amazing. It was like, it's endlessly rewatchable to me.
Yeah, and I think that it's interesting that you sort of call this episode out as being fan fiction, like, considering that I think that's like an easy complaint to make about Doctor Who is the over-reliance on callbacks and kind of, obviously not romantic fan fiction, but your standard fan fiction of just let's just cram everything into here that we can possibly think of, everything cool that we'd want to see.
Yeah.
There's a lot of moments in Doctor Who where I feel like just the coolest callback is what they go for over the substance of like what that does for the episode.
And the problem that you get is because it's essentially sorry, just a meme of William Hartnell came up on the screen. Essentially, the problem that you get is that the same showrunners write the show over and over and over again, and then they start calling back to their own episodes, and it just becomes a show of callbacks rather than having any actual substance. That's why I really liked this episode, Rogue, is because it was written by two new people who were like, didn't have any connection to any of it, and were like, we're just going to write a really good story.
Well, it really seems to look like this episode could get all the way through to the end without any Daleks, which would be a real big step forward in
Alex
that way.
hates the Daleks.
I don't necessarily hate I don't find the Daleks to be a great, compelling villain just purely because of the amount of times that they've been in it. But if we get to the point where we get to the end of this series and there is no, and they base these last couple of episodes more around around Ruby's origin.
Yeah.
Then I think if we manage to avoid Daleks, by the time they choose to bring up the Daleks again, if that is at the end of season 2 or in a mid-season kind of episode, it's going to make so much more impact when it happens, compared to if they did it again now even, because the Daleks were such a huge part of the Jodie Foster stuff.
Jodie Whittaker?
Jodie Whittaker stuff.
Yeah.
It hasn't been that long still. I think just the further they can stay away from just bringing back the Daleks. And the reason I say this, obviously, is because a lot of what I've seen is that in those early seasons, and they just couldn't stop bringing back Daleks for specific episodes.
Because Daleks are what sold at the time. They sold toys, and when people grew up watching Tom Baker, they remembered the Daleks, and then they would put it on for their kids.
Yeah, but merchandise is no excuse for things like that. That's one of the massive issues and complaints that people have with Star Wars is how many characters that are huge merch sellers and cute animated characters and all this. Like Grogu's like an exception, but you see that kind of put it everywhere.
Like the pogs.
Yeah, the Pogs are like a
say it
perfect
wrong.
example of it.
Pog.
Yeah, because they didn't provide anything to it, and just they. I mean, they weren't so bad because they weren't like a callback, and they were just like this. They only had a couple minutes on screen, essentially.
Well, that's what David Tennant really hated about K9. He was like, K9, he didn't want K9 to be in School Reunion because he was like, it's not like a character, it's just stupid, it's too stupid for Doctor Who.
Yeah.
And like, Doctor Who does some stuff like that sometimes, but it feels, up until recently, I guess because it was made by the BBC, it didn't feel like as kind of capitalist or consumerist in a way. But maybe going forward, like Disney are going to be making loads of Dalek toys and.
Sure. Yeah.
You know what I mean?
So this episode itself, let's stick to Rogue for a while. Let's get digging into.
I bought
the
them
episode.
as a couple. I saw some people online saying it was too fast, and I was like, no, it's a Whovian romance.
It was a very short period of time for something like that to end in such an intense way. But that didn't take anything away from it when it happened. It felt earned through the episode. And there wasn't really any other way that you could make that story drag out for any longer than a single night. So they were stuck to having everything happen in that one episode, really. I think like a time jump, these characters have been on the loose for 3 years. What's going on in the background? That wouldn't have really fit into this kind of
No, and
episode.
you want it to be a short period of time because you want it to feel trapped and claustrophobic, because then that's the danger of the monsters coming to get them. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, and I think one of my favourite episodes of this sort of type of these one-off less epic episodes was probably the Agatha Christie episode from the Tennant time.
Yeah, I love that episode.
And I think this episode shows the leaps from then. I thought that sort of going back to the past, kind of, it worked so much better in this episode. It was so much more entertaining, so much better written than that old stuff, than that old episode. I thought like the characters were really good that weren't just your main three, if you like. The villains, I think, came across as like authentic, like decent characters, really good introduced characters as well. I assume that was their first time being in a Doctor Who episode. I don't think I ever recall seeing those characters
the Agatha
before.
Christie one was all a one-off.
This episode.
Oh yeah, sorry.
Those villains, the shapeshifters.
No, yeah, they're completely new.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. I just loved it. I didn't like Ruby in it, but I haven't liked Ruby in like much of them. Like, to be clear, like, this is still like a 10 out of 10 to me. But I was like, whenever it would cut to a scene with Ruby, I was like, I don't care, lad. Show us more Doctor.
Yeah, I think I said when we were watching it, I think I looked at you at one of the points and said, I wish that we weren't going back to this because the stuff with the Doctor and Rogue was so good and so compelling in this episode. But I do actually think, on reflection, looking back on it and how Ruby's brought back into it at the end with the trap and the whole ending, I do think that the Ruby stuff wasn't too bad. I think it was some of the best Ruby stuff of this season so far.
That is true. I like that she was playing along with it because she's like a proper. She's not like as overpowered as Clara, but like she's like got her own like intelligence and survivalness about her, which makes her a good companion.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? She's not constantly like, Doctor, like, help. You know what I mean?
One piece of upgrade I think that the Doctor needs, those earrings that allow them to dance in a certain way that fit the times that they could fit in. They need to add some form of communication to those, because it would have been very helpful if you could have just spoken to Ruby.
If you could walkie-talkie it.
If you could walkie-talkie it, you think that would be the most basic use of earrings in an episode like this, where they can communicate through them as well. But we can forgive it because it was just so good.
It was so good. And like, the acting of both of them, I just bought it. I just bought the whole thing, and I was like, now I want to go off and read like fan fiction about like Rogue.
Yeah.
I don't think it'll even be written yet. That's the issue.
No, possibly not. But I think the effects of the characters who'd left their bodies to go into the new one, the sort of fried, kind of cooked look of the bodies,
so scary looking.
looked really good.
Yeah.
It was like a really good looking piece of like practical.
And it still felt like Doctor Who. It didn't feel like gory. You know what I mean?
No, it just looked better. It looked gorier because it just looked more convincing.
Yeah.
But it wasn't over the top. It was just really good.
I've got one critique. I didn't like Rogue Spaceship. I liked it on the outside, but I didn't like it on the inside.
I think the ship stuff was a little bit of a callback to like a Han Solo. It was giving them that Han Solo type because he's very much got that feeling about him. The whole bounty hunter. I think that he was trying to capture a bit of the Han Solo character, and obviously the attachment to the ship, that kind of like futuristic ship style as well. I thought the ship actually looked really good. I really love those scenes that are in the ship. Just because
I loved the scene in the ship. I'm just talking about the set.
Yeah.
I just didn't like the set, but that's my only criticism of this episode. Genuinely, and like that's such a small thing.
Well, how about the comparisons between Rogue and Jack? Since you touched on it a little bit.
I was talking to you about this last night, right? So it's like if Russell was right, it's like Russell's kind of writing his own fan fiction of Captain Jack and the Doctor, but with like the roles switched. So it's like Rogue's the Doctor kind of archetype, and then 15 acts more like Captain Jack. But then I've also read online, people being like, they think that Rogue is an earlier version of Captain Jack, and like earlier in his timeline.
Right.
Because he's like, he's like immortal.
No, that's interesting.
But I haven't seen much evidence about that, and I don't think Russell would do that and do like a callback like that, because he's trying to build like a new show and a new character. And I think if he was a callback, it would be like a massive shame.
Well, is Jack a character who travels through time, or does he belong to a time period, but he's been living for a long time?
Well, he's a time agent who's like gone rogue.
Right. So this would be in Jack's past, before he'd met the Doctor.
I don't really fully understand the theory, and I'm not sure the people saying the theory even fully understand the theory. But I think there is definitely like there's something there.
Yeah. I don't think that it's meant to actually be Jack. I think it's just that he's brought back a character who fits that same thing to approach it again with a Doctor who is gay this time, just to sort of play off that same dynamic again, because it would have been cool. I'm sure there's no doubt that like Russell T Davies at the time probably wanted to do a sort of more pseudo gay relationship between the Doctor and Jack when he was first introduced, but it just wasn't fit for the times. I suppose it might have been the way he saw it, that it wasn't something you wanted. But and the relationship, the kind of the Rose tension, made for like entertaining TV, I think, at the time 100%, as well.
100%. Like I think it's perfect in what's that Moffat episode, The Unearthly Child, the World War II one. How basically it's the Doctor and Jack fighting over Rose's attention.
Yeah.
And like that's like an amazing dynamic that's brought us some of the best Doctor Who in that episode.
Yeah, I think it just kills me with this that he's not going to be in it more, because it just felt like it was such a good introduction for the character, and like he saw as he was making it that if it was well executed, that it would make sense to bring him back, and maybe that's why he's got the Find Me at the end. Maybe that was like a last minute.
Do you know what worries me though about like Rogue coming back is I'm worried that the actor's going to cost too much money.
Why's that?
Because he's like a really famous actor, like he was the King in Hamilton.
Yeah, but I think stage actors can make themselves a lot more available for TV. I don't know what the paying rates are in comparison from stage to television, but I'm sure that taking a few episodes of Disney money, he can make himself available for it.
He is getting the Disney money in it.
Plus, it's not like you need to bring Rogue back for a season. You only need to bring him back for a couple of episodes, maybe somewhere down the line. It would be in a future series at this point.
Do you think he might be a New River Song?
I think a logical way to bring him might be when Ruby goes out of it, when he's between having companions. If it happens that he changes his companions up at the end of next season, it would make sense for him to find Rogue at the end and maybe have a passage of time go between the end of next season and the beginning of season 3, where maybe he spends time with the character, because I think that would be a good payoff for what they've sort of got from this episode.
Like a bit of a one-off companion type of deal.
Well, no, like an off-screen companion type deal.
No, but I want to see it. I'm invested now.
Well, we could get that at the beginning of the season after. I mean, this is just fantasy writing it, but I don't think that I can really see him being brought back to be an additional companion alongside Ruby. So I'm thinking it's going to be further into the future where he would be coming back into it.
Can you imagine how good a show would be of them two though, when the Doctor's got like an evenly matched partner and there's like romantic and sexual tension throughout it?
It would be good.
So, what are you thinking about next week's episode then?
Next week, I mean, I think we've got a lot more to say about Rogue, to be honest. What did you think of the sort of side characters, the roles that were played by the creatures, the shape-shifting creatures?
I thought they were sick, yeah. I'm really glad that it wasn't just a straight historical, because I'm not going to lie, I absolutely hate them.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I think that's some of the worst Doctor Who. I think if you're going to do a history, you want it to have, like, sci-fi elements, do you know what I mean? And this, like, completely, like, delivered. Like, it was just really, really good.
It seems like for as much as you enjoy it, you haven't really got too much to actually say about the episode, which is quite interesting.
It's kind of like, I don't have anything negative to say, so I've almost got nothing to say. It's just no notes.
I understand that, yeah. I don't know how well that leads off to a 2-part finale. I think it was very emotional, and I think it left on a very high note at the end of the episode. I think the whole episode was just so good, and there was no real indication at the end of the episode of where they're going for the next one. It was just sort of what we got from the preview.
Well, none of these episodes have flowed together, and that's a criticism of this whole season. Like, me and you were we were looking at all of the episodes, and we were like, how would you order them? Because the way they've come out, they don't make any sense.
Yeah. I think they make sense maybe commercially, but maybe they don't make so much sense for the narrative of the show.
Well, how do they make sense commercially?
Well, you want to just distribute the quality out, and I think they've done that so far. I think they knew that the Beatles one was going to be a smash because people are going to be interested. They don't have to worry about the placement of that episode. Like, if people wanted to watch an episode with the Beatles in it, they're going to watch it regardless.
Yeah.
And they've sort of hit a real, strong stride in these past 3 episodes, really. 73 Yards, Dot and Bubble, and Rogue have been such a strong
But it doesn't make
back-to-back.
any sense because, I know, quite a lot of people anecdotally who were excited, tuned in, it was Space Babies, then they didn't watch again, and then they tuned back in and it was the Beatles one, and they were like, this is cringe because it's singing, and then they haven't watched any of the rest of the season. You want a 73 Yards or something to grip people in.
Well, I think the show has given people opportunities to come back with the quality of these past few. I think anyone who gives up on the show after 2 episodes isn't going to want to watch it anyway, regardless.
No, but I think people who liked the show in the past, coming back to it, would give up on the season after 2 episodes, 2 bad episodes.
Yeah. Yeah, maybe.
It's just sad. I don't understand it. I love this show and I don't want it to fail. I don't think it's near that though, to be fair.
No.
Because I think in America it's doing really well.
Well, of course it's not. I mean, this Disney deal, I don't know how it's been sort of presented publicly. It's not going to be a one-off season deal. They're filming the second one already. They're going to want it long term. Doctor Who's a huge moneymaker if it gets done right, and I think that when it all settles after this season, you find out how many people have really watched it through Disney Plus and BBC and just on TV in different countries that show it. There will be a higher viewership for this than what it might seem at the minute, just because it is getting that separated audience. I think you had the same thing with a lot of Disney things so far that have also been shared with elsewhere. Obviously, think about the Marvel films, how they've performed worse at box office since Disney Plus came in because people have the option to watch them at home.
Yeah.
But if people are having to pay £27 to watch it at home, then that's 3 cinema tickets, 4 cinema tickets every time. So I think that the Doctor Who viewing figures will be more positive than what you think they are. I don't think they're close to going backwards or going out of fashion or anything along those lines.
Do you know what it is? I'm just in all of these Facebook groups and people say it's going to go off the air and it just gets in my head. But it's not true.
Well, I think it was a really, really strong episode. I think all the characters were really well established and really well developed over not an overly long episode either. I think Ruby held her own really well in this one.
What about that really cringe bit though when she was going about my mate Beck would beat you up and tie you to a lamppost? Why are you so excited to go into the past and then you're surprised when people are being sexist to you?
Yeah.
But that's not. That doesn't make it a bad episode. That just means Ruby's annoying. Do you know what I mean?
She's a 19-year-old girl, and she's from the modern day, and
she's not used to people talking to her like that.
No, of course not. No.
I mean, neither should she be. Do you know what I mean?
I think her reaction to it was good. I think it was
a little bit cringe.
No, she's a 19-year-old. She was just sticking up for herself. I think it was a really good episode. I think it was the most consistent, best episode of the season so far by quite a long way. It was a proper return to Doctor Who.
It was amazing.
Loads of Shooty, good split of Shooty and Ruby. They had that nice B plot, main plot, and I think the way they all came together at the end with the reveal that the girl she'd been helping out with and hanging out with ended up being one of those creatures was really good.
It made sense because it's like you'd see how it would be fun playing that as an alien. And it's not like I want to destroy the world and more haha. It's like they're just fucking about.
Yeah, absolutely. What have you thought of the behind the scenes looks through this season? How do you think things are looking?
What do you mean by the behind the scenes? Do you mean the extras that they put out as episodes?
Yeah. Because I know you watch them very consistently after each episode.
Them consistently. I think they're good, but after reading the Christopher Eccleston book, I can't help but think that, like, maybe, like, even Confidential back in the day, like the old behind-the-scenes show, maybe they just put it out to kind of be like, we don't mistreat our staff. These are all of our staff being all friendly and happy. That was maybe, like, the original motivation, but I don't think the staff are being mistreated now, from what I've read. It seems like it genuinely, like, quite a nice vibe.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just, like, fun to watch people making TV, because it's not anything I know anything about. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
In the same way you'd watch a documentary about, like, fish or something.
Yeah. You seem very stuck to the negatives today. It feels like you're looking at a lot of things through that seem, I mean, for such a good episode, it's sort of like a celebration, like return to form episode. I mean, I'm sure that through the Whittaker seasons there wasn't an episode as good as that one. I mean, I think that's probably like a proper triumphant Doctor Who moment.
What about the episode where they're Dan's being the tour guide in Liverpool illegally?
I don't think I've seen that one.
That one's fun.
Was it better than this one?
No, it was not.
Feels like you've resigned yourself to a.
It's a 10 out of 10.
To a defensive.
It's a 10 out of 10 episode.
I see.
What rating would you give it?
I think it's a very solid 9 out of 10. Yeah.
Is it the best episode this season?
Definitely the best episode this season. I just said it. I think it's the best episode that I can imagine they've had since. I mean, I don't know about the Matt Smith stuff. Maybe even going back that far. Around Capaldi time, maybe some of the best Capaldi stuff.
What about the Zygon speech? What about Kill the Moon, where the moon's an egg?
Maybe that's better. Who knows?
Who knows?
But yeah, I think looking forward to the last 2 episodes. I think there's going to be some big moments. I think
very excited.
I'm hoping that we're going to finally find out a bit more about Ruby and why she's so significant, why the snow things are happening.
I was saving something. There's a theory that this whole season is in a TV show.
Why is that?
Because the doctor's like acting out of character and being made to do stuff, and Ruby's like a Mary Sue. I don't believe it, but it's a theory that I've seen.
And who said that? The gammonest of gammon in the Doctor Who middle-aged fan
It
club?
was actually on Twitter. It was like a SJW.
I see. Well, I don't think that holds any.
I don't think it makes any sense.
No,
I just wanted to see what you think.
They would never
with
do
your
that.
English degree.
I mean, if they do that, then I won't watch it ever again. That would be the stupidest.
It was all a dream.
It would make no sense.
It was all a dream inside a Dalek. Stranger things have happened.
Stranger Things, maybe. Yeah, that was our maybe the most negative sounding 10 out of 10 review ever.
How was it negative?
I don't know, you just seem to want to go back to the most negative parts of anything through Doctor Who, like any failures and the decline of the show. But I think that was
Justice for Christopher Eccleston should be the tagline of his podcast.
You've been tainted by his autobiography.
His autobiography is very good.
His autobiography's ruined Doctor Who for you forever.
No, I love Doctor Who. I got some TARDIS earrings the other day. Very happy about them.
Maybe we can look back on this episode if we get a rough one next week, and you'll appreciate how good it really was.
To be a true fan is to hate the thing. In a way.
Sure. Well, there you go. On those very depressing, morbid fan point of views, that'll be the end of our episode.
Let us know what you think as well. I absolutely love this one.
Allegedly.
Allegedly.
Very good episode. Hopefully leading into a really strong final leg to the season. I think they've got really good momentum, and I think they just need to keep it going. Just strike while the iron's hot, keep getting the good stuff out. And I think there'd be an argument that if we get a strong final 2 episodes, it's one of the best 5-episode runs of Doctor Who that I can imagine there's been.
Better than season 1?
Who knows? I don't know. I think season 1 never really had a run of 5 that I would say would be comparable to those 3 we've just seen, with 2 more really strong finales.
We'll actually go in a minute, but it's the first time in a while I've been able to like recommend Doctor Who to people and be like, you need to watch this. It's as good as Baby Reindeer. It's as good as like all of the other stuff. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like, that to me, this episode Rogue was like the top of TV.
There you go. That's more like it. Thank you very much for listening, everyone. We'll be back next week for the first half of the 2-parter, and we'll hopefully have more positive words to say.